Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with One Pot Chicken and Sausage Orzo. That's right, I really don't make a lot of New Year's resolutions. Hey, if it's not broken, don't fix it. But one thing I would like to do in the new year is share more of these delicious one-pot recipes. And above and beyond that you only need one pot to make this, these type of dishes tend to be very simple and fast to make. So let's go ahead and get started with the browning of the sausage. So what we'll do is we'll place a pot over medium-high heat, and in just a little bit of olive oil, we're going to brown some spicy Italian sausage. And you can use the bulk stuff if you want, but all I did was remove the casings from 2 Italian sausages and sort of crumble it up. And like I said, we're going to want to brown this on medium-high heat, and while we do, we want to break it up pretty fine. And it was right about here when I remembered what a bad job a rounded wooden spoon does at crumbling sausage meat. So I made the executive decision and switched to a flat-edge wooden spatula, which did work way better. And what we'll do is we'll continue to stir that and break it up and cook it until it's fairly well browned, at which point it should look something very close to this. And when it does, we can stop and add our chicken. So I'm going to add in 2 boneless, skinless chicken breasts that, as you can see, I cut into bite-sized pieces. And we'll stir that in and cook it for about a minute. We're not really worried about browning it. We just want it to mingle with those sausage fats to pick up a little bit of that flavor before we add the rest of the ingredients. And unlike the sausage, this chicken meat isn't seasoned, so I will toss in a little bit of salt at this point. And I should mention I almost always use chicken thigh for this. But this time I did go with the breast, because I know a lot of you are going to use that anyway. But anyway, we'll get into that later. Like I said, we're going to cook that chicken stirring for about a minute, at which point we can add our chicken broth, or of course chicken stock. In this context, those things are synonymous. And sure, if you have to use water, go ahead, but only if you have to. Do not use water on purpose. And we'll give that a stir. And of course, if there was any caramelization on the bottom, that will have been deglazed, and all that tastiness will go into the liquid. And then besides the broth, we also want about a half a cup of tomato sauce. I really don't want this to be a tomato sauce, per se, but I do want a little bit here for some color and some acidity to help balance the other flavors. So we'll stir that in, and we will raise our heat to high and bring this up to a simmer. And while we're waiting for that to happen, let's go ahead and grab our orzo. And if you've never seen it before, it is a beautiful rice-shaped pasta that's also sometimes referred to as melon seed pasta, or zo I've heard. Oh yeah, first pun of the new year. Don't worry, they get worse. And what we'll do as soon as our mixture comes to a simmer is toss in our orzo, along with some more salt, and we will stir that in. And then here's the deal. What we'll do is we'll lower our heat down to medium, and we'll cook this stirring for about 10 to 12 minutes, or until the pasta is cooked and most of the liquid is absorbed. And if everything goes according to plan, those 2 things should happen about the same time. And we don't necessarily have to stir constantly, but we do want to stir it very often because this mixture is going to start to thicken up. And because we are on medium heat and that's bubbling pretty good, we don't want it to stick and burn to the bottom. So keep it moving, keep an eye on it. And this is what mine looked like about halfway through. You can see that pasta starting to swell up, and the mixture is definitely getting thicker. And by the way, something I'll mention on the blog post, but you might want to keep an extra splash of broth handy in case all the liquid gets absorbed before your pasta is tender, which in that case you can throw in an extra splash, okay? But anyway, like I said, we're going to cook that for about 10 to 12 minutes until our pasta is just about tender and most of that liquid's been absorbed, at which point it should look something like this. And of course, we could go just by looks, but that would be kind of crazy, since a much better idea would be to take a spoon and actually try some. So I gave mine a taste, and I confirmed that it was cooked perfectly, which for me is about 95% tender. Because even though we're going to turn off the heat and do the final couple steps, it's still going to continue to cook a little bit. But anyway, when we've decided our pasta's cooked long enough, we're going to turn off the heat, and we're going to dump in a nice handful of fresh Reggiano Parmesan, and we'll stir that in. And then besides some nice real Italian cheese, I'm also going to add some fresh herb. So I'm going to toss in a little bit of finely and freshly sliced chives. And I know those aren't technically an herb, but technically who cares? And then we'll also do some freshly chopped Italian parsley. And once we stir that in, we are pretty much done. And I say pretty much because we're never really done until we give it the final taste. So we'll go ahead and we'll sample a little bit, mostly checking for salt. And once we're happy with how that tastes, we can go ahead and dish that up. And I know what you're thinking. That looks amazing. Let's just eat it as is. Well, we could, but let's not. Because how I really think you should finish this is with a nice spoon of fresh, creamy ricotta cheese. And not only is this going to provide the always important visual contrast, but it will also provide a contrast in texture and temperature. So while optional, that dollop is highly recommended. And we will top that with a little more Italian parsley, and that's it. Our one-pot chicken and sausage orzo is done. Just a wonderfully comforting dish. And what's happened is that starch from the pasta has combined with that stock to make a very silky, very smooth sauce. So I really do love this technique. And as I just mentioned, that little bit of ricotta really does wonderful things here. Just a beautiful, cool, and creamy companion to our spicy sausage meat. And regarding the chicken, as I mentioned, I do usually like to use chicken thigh because I think it stays a little moister. But having said that, this was not bad with the breast. Although if I do use breast again, I'd probably brown it first and then remove it from the pan and then just put it back at the end so it doesn't cook so long. But anyway, I'll expand upon that on the blog post. At the moment, I don't want to think too much. I would just prefer to eat this because it's so good. I mean, I enjoyed this so much, even if it took 3 or 4 pots, I would still make it. But it doesn't. It only takes 1 pot. It's right in the name, okay? So I really do hope you give this a try soon. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info as usual. And as always, enjoy.